Kayla Turner, an accomplished FBI agent, had spent years working her way up the ranks. Known for her sharp intellect and dedication, she had earned the respect of her colleagues and the community. Yet, like many black women in high-ranking positions, she often faced challenges that others did not. Some subtle, some not so subtle. Despite her many achievements, she had to constantly prove herself, pushing past the doubts and prejudices others held against her because of her race and gender. On this particular day, Kayla had taken a break from her work to meet a fellow agent at a local cafe. It was supposed to be a simple, relaxing break-in between her assignments. She was used to the hectic pace of the job, but she knew that moments like these were rare and valuable. She had arrived early, finding a quiet spot near the window, where she could enjoy the sunlight and a good cup of coffee. Her colleague, Agent Mark Reynolds, was running late as usual, so Kayla decided to take a moment to unwind. As she sipped her coffee, her mind wandered to the latest investigation she had been working on. It had been a long few weeks, and the pressure to get answers was weighing on her. Still, she remained focused, determined to see the case through to the end. Her work was important, and she wasn't about to let anything stand in her way. Suddenly, the door to the cafe opened, and a tall man walked in. He was wearing a uniform, police, Kayla noted, as he made his way to the counter. His posture was stiff, and his gaze seemed to sweep the room, landing on her for a brief moment. Kayla didn't think much of it. She had dealt with all kinds of people in her career, and this man was no different. However, as the man ordered his coffee, he kept looking back at her, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Kayla felt a slight tension in the air, but chose to ignore it, focusing instead on the conversation she was about to have with Mark. She didn't want to waste energy on something that might just be her imagination. That was until the man walked over to her table. He stood there for a moment, as if trying to gather his thoughts before speaking. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but notice," he began, his voice dripping with condescension. "Are you really an FBI agent?" Kayla was taken aback by the question. She was used to people being surprised by her profession, but there was something different in his tone, something dismissive. She looked up at him, her eyes narrowing. "Yes, I am," she replied coolly, trying to maintain her composure. The man didn't seem to care for her response. Instead, he scoffed and crossed his arms. "Well, it's just hard to believe. I didn't expect someone like you to be an FBI agent," he said, his words hanging in the air. Kayla's heart rate picked up as she realized what was happening. It wasn't just a random encounter. This was a confrontation. The man's words were not just ignorant. They were laced with prejudice. She could feel their patience beginning to wear thin, but she held herself in check. As an FBI agent, she had learned to navigate moments like these without letting her emotions control her actions. Instead of reacting, Kayla took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I assure you, I'm more than qualified for the job," she said firmly, keeping her tone steady. "The FBI doesn't hire people based on appearance. We hire the best." The man smirked, clearly not convinced. "I'm sure you do," he replied sarcastically. "But I'm guessing you didn't exactly climb the ranks based on skill alone. Probably just another case of affirmative action." Huh. At that moment, the words hit Kayla like a punch to the gut. She had heard this kind of remark before, but it still stung every time. It wasn't just a personal insult. It was a broader attack on the very system that had allowed her to succeed. It was a reflection of the biases that continued to plague not only law enforcement, but society as a whole. Kayla took a moment to steady herself. She knew that responding with anger or frustration would only feed into the man's expectations of her. Instead, she calmly stood up from the table, looking him square in the eyes. "I don't need to prove anything to you," she said, her voice firm and clear. "But I'll tell you this, I've earned my place, and I'll continue to earn it every day." The man's smug expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered, muttering something under his breath as he turned away. Kayla watched him leave the cafe, her heart still racing, but her mind clear. She had handled the situation with dignity, and that was all she could control. After the man had left the cafe, Kayla sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on what had just happened. Her heart was still pounding, but she had managed to stay calm and collected. As she thought about the encounter, she realized just how often she had to face moments like these. This wasn't the first time someone had underestimated her, and it surely wouldn't be the last. But today, there was something different. She had felt the sting of the man's words, but instead of letting them affect her, she had turned the situation around. She had proven her strength, and that made her feel proud. Kayla's phone buzzed on the table, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Mark, who had finally arrived. "Sorry I'm late, Kayla. See you soon," it read. She smiled and quickly replied, telling him she was waiting for him at the usual spot. While she waited, Kayla couldn't help but feel grateful for her role at the FBI. It had been a long road to get here, but every step had been worth it. She had faced challenges, both in her career and in her personal life, but nothing had stopped her from pushing forward. Her determination had always been her greatest strength, and it had gotten her through some of the toughest times. When Mark finally arrived, he greeted her with a warm smile. "Hey, sorry about the delay," he said, sitting down across from her. "How's everything going?" Kayla quickly brushed off the incident that had just taken place. "It's all right. Just a little frustrating, you know," she said, taking a sip of her coffee. "I had an encounter with a guy earlier who, well, let's just say he didn't expect someone like me to be an FBI agent." Mark raised an eyebrow, surprised. "What happened?" Kayla briefly explained the exchange, leaving out the more hurtful details, but still making it clear that the man's attitude had been disrespectful. Mark listened attentively, his face showing concern as he absorbed her words. "That's really messed up," Mark said, shaking his head. "I can't believe people still think like that." "I know," Kayla replied, "but it's not surprising. I've had my fair share of moments where people doubt me or question my qualifications, especially because I'm a black woman in such a high-ranking role." Mark nodded, clearly understanding the weight of her words. It's ridiculous that in this day and age, people still hold those outdated views. Kayla smiled at his response. She appreciated his support, even if he couldn't fully understand what it was like to be in her shoes. But he was trying, and that meant a lot to her. "It is what it is," she said. "I've learned to rise above it, but sometimes it just gets under your skin." "I get it," Mark said, "but you've handled it like a pro. Not everyone would have stayed as calm as you did." Kayla chuckled softly. "Sometimes you have to remind yourself that it's not about them. It's about me and my work. I can't let their ignorance control my actions." The two of them chatted for a while longer, discussing their ongoing cases and the challenges they were facing in their work. Kayla felt a sense of calm return to her as she focused on the conversations with Mark. Talking about their shared mission helped her shift her mindset and keep things in perspective. But even as they spoke, Kayla couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was just the beginning of something bigger. The way she had handled the situation in the cafe had shown her that she could face any challenge head-on. She had stood up for herself, and she had done it without losing her composure. Kayla knew that there were many more hurdles ahead, and she would face them just as she always had, with strength and grace. The work she did at the FBI wasn't just about solving cases. It was about fighting for a world where everyone was treated with dignity and respect. And for Kayla, that was a fight worth having. The days that followed Kayla's encounter in the cafe were filled with mixed emotions. While she felt proud of how she had handled the situation, there were still moments when the man's words replayed in her mind. She had been working in law enforcement for years, earning respect through hard work and determination. But it seemed that the prejudice and ignorance of some people would never fully disappear. As an FBI agent, Kayla was accustomed to dealing with difficult and high-stakes situations. Her job required a level of focus and emotional resilience that not everyone could manage. Yet, no matter how much experience she had, It never got easier to face the prejudices that came with being a black woman in a position of authority. Every time someone questioned her qualifications or assumed she didn't belong, it felt like a personal challenge. But Kayla knew that showing weakness or frustration in those moments would only give others the power they sought to take from her. Instead, she had learned to stand tall and prove, through her actions, that she belonged. As the week progressed, Kayla found herself more determined than ever to continue doing the work she loved. The incident at the cafe had reignited her passion for the job and the mission she had dedicated herself to. It reminded her why she had joined the FBI in the first place: to make a difference, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, and to create a world where justice truly meant equality for all. One morning, she was called into her supervisor's office for a routine check-in. As she walked down the hall, she couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. She had worked hard over the past few months, and she was eager to hear any feedback that might help her continue to improve in her role. Kayla, her supervisor, Agent Harris, greeted her as she entered. "Please, have a seat." Kayla sat down, straightening her jacket as she tried to maintain her composure. Agent Harris had been her mentor throughout her career, and she respected him deeply. He was fair and always gave constructive criticism when necessary, but he also recognized the challenges she faced in the field. "I've been keeping an eye on your work recently," Agent Harris began, "and I have to say, I'm impressed. Your investigations are thorough, and your ability to handle sensitive situations is remarkable. We need more agents like you in the field." Kayla smiled, relieved to hear positive feedback. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that." Agent Harris paused for a moment, his gaze softening. "You know, I've been in this line of work for a long time, and I've seen some of the challenges you faced. But I also know that you're one of the best agents we have. Your ability to remain calm and collected under pressure is something we can all learn from." Kayla felt a sense of pride swelling within her. It wasn't easy to hear praise, especially when so many others often overlooked her contributions. But Agent Harris's words meant something special. They weren't just acknowledging her work. They were recognizing her strength, her character, and her ability to rise above the negativity. As the conversation continued, Kayla found herself reflecting on her journey. There had been so many times when she had been underestimated, doubted, or dismissed. But here she was, an FBI agent, respected by her peers, making a real difference in the world. Every challenge she faced had only made her stronger, and every setback had been an opportunity for growth. After the meeting, Kayla walked back to her desk, feeling more confident and motivated than ever. She had proven to herself that she was more than capable of handling whatever came her way. The experience at the cafe was just another reminder that people would always try to bring her down, but she was stronger than any prejudice they could throw at her. The next few days brought new challenges, as they always did in her line of work. But Kayla faced each one with the same level of professionalism and determination. She didn't let the negative experiences or the ignorant comments from others affect her work. Instead, she focused on what truly mattered: serving the community, fighting for justice, and being a role model for the next generation of women and men who would follow in her footsteps. As she moved forward, Kayla knew that the road ahead would be filled with obstacles. But with every step she took, she was leaving behind a trail of success and resilience. And no matter what others thought of her, she would continue to show the world that a person's worth is never determined by the color of their skin, but by their actions, their integrity, and their unwavering commitment to doing what's right. The following days after the incident in the cafe passed without much trouble. Kayla tried to put the negative experience behind her, but it lingered in the back of her mind, a reminder of how far she had come and how much farther she still had to go. Despite all her achievements, Kayla knew that her journey in the FBI and in life wasn't going to be without its struggles. But that didn't discourage her. If anything, it fueled her determination to prove herself, not just to others, but to herself as well. Her schedule was as packed as usual. There were cases to handle, meetings to attend, and endless paperwork to get through. As an FBI agent, she knew that she couldn't allow anything to distract her from her work. The people she helped, the community she served, were counting on her. Every day brought new challenges, but Kayla was used to working through them. In fact, she thrived under pressure. One afternoon, Kayla was called to assist with a high-profile case. It was a matter of national importance, and her team needed all hands on deck. She was tasked with gathering intelligence and interviewing witnesses. It was intense work, but Kayla's experience and focus made her an invaluable member of the team. She knew how to ask the right questions, how to read the room, and most importantly, how to listen. That afternoon, as she carefully navigated the interview process with a witness, her ability to stay calm and ask insightful questions stood out. As the case progressed, Kayla spent more time working alongside her team, including agents she had trained and mentored over the years. She was proud of the relationships she had built. They respected her not only for her expertise, but also for her leadership and integrity. Every time she stepped into a new situation, she was reminded of the trust others placed in her, and that trust was something she didn't take lightly. But even as Kayla put her energy into the case at hand, the memory of the man in the cafe crept back into her mind now and then. While she was determined to push past it, there were times when it still felt raw. She had worked so hard to earn her position in the FBI, yet people like him seemed determined to undermine everything she had accomplished. Kayla knew that ignorance and prejudice were things she couldn't always change, but she could and would continue to rise above them. A week after the cafe incident, Kayla received a phone call that would prove to be another turning point in her career. It was from her boss, Agent Stevens. He had heard about what had happened and wanted to check in with her. Kayla hadn't expected to hear from him about it. She had handled the situation herself and didn't feel the need to involve her superiors. But when she picked up the phone, Agent Stevens's voice was warm and concerned. "Kayla, I heard about what happened at the cafe. I just wanted to say that we're all behind you. No one should have to deal with that kind of treatment." Kayla was surprised by his words. She wasn't one to ask for sympathy, but hearing that her team was behind her made her feel grateful. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. But honestly, I'm fine. It's part of the job, and I don't let things like that distract me." "I know you don't," Agent Stevens said with a chuckle. "But just know that we're here for you if you ever need anything. You're a valuable member of this team, and I don't want you to feel like you're facing these challenges alone." Kayla felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It was a small but meaningful gesture. In that moment, she realized that even though there would always be people who doubted her or tried to bring her down, she had a team who saw her for who she truly was, a dedicated, capable agent who wasn't afraid to face adversity head-on. Later that week, Kayla attended a department meeting where several officers and agents came together to discuss ongoing cases and share insights. As she walked into the room, several of her colleagues greeted her warmly, their smiles genuine. There was no sign of the cold indifference that she had encountered in the cafe. It was moments like these that reminded her why she had joined the FBI in the first place, to be part of something bigger than herself, to make a difference in the world. The days after the meeting with her boss, Agent Stevens, felt different to Kayla. There was a renewed sense of confidence that came from knowing her team had her back. Although the events in the cafe still lingered in her thoughts, they no longer held the same weight. She had faced the challenge head-on and handled it with grace, and now it was time to focus on her work. The following weeks were filled with a series of intense cases that required all her attention. Kayla threw herself into the work, determined to make a difference. She knew that the work she did wasn't just for herself. It was for the people she served. Every investigation, every arrest, every breakthrough was a step toward creating a safer, fairer world, and she was proud to be a part of it. One particular case stood out. Kayla had been assigned to a high-profile investigation involving a series of robberies that had been plaguing local businesses. The suspects were well-organized and elusive, making it difficult to track them down. The pressure was on, and Kayla thrived under it. She worked day and night, piecing together the clues and tracking down leads. Her methodical approach and keen eye for detail paid off. After days of relentless work, she was able to piece together the puzzle and locate the hideout of the suspects. The team moved in quickly, and in a carefully coordinated operation, they were able to arrest the robbers without any harm to innocent bystanders. It was a huge win, and Kayla felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she watched the criminals being led away in handcuffs. After the operation, Kayla's team gathered to debrief and review their success. As they sat around the table, discussing what went well and what could be improved, Kayla felt a sense of camaraderie that reminded her of why she had joined the FBI. They weren't just coworkers. They were a family, each person contributing their unique skills and strengths to the mission. While the case had been a major success, Kayla couldn't help but think back to the incident with the officer in the cafe. The difference between this moment of teamwork and that moment of prejudice was stark. The respect she received from her colleagues and the sense of accomplishment she felt were the true reflections of who she was, not the ignorant assumptions of one person. The work she did was important, and it mattered. The impact she had was real. As the weeks went on, Kayla continued to prove herself in the field. Her confidence grew with every case she cracked, every criminal she apprehended. She was a force to be reckoned with, and the respect she had earned was no longer just from her team. She was known for her ability to get results, and she was becoming a role model for the next generation of agents, especially those who would face similar challenges in their careers. One evening after a particularly long day, Kayla found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She was sitting in her apartment, sipping a cup of tea, when she thought about the officer's words in the cafe. At first, they had stung, but now, they seemed so distant. She had proven herself, and that was something no one could take away from her. She had built a career based on her skills, not her appearance. And every day, she was showing the world that she was capable, determined, and ready to fight for justice. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Agent Stevens. He had sent her a text to congratulate her on the recent success of the robbery case and to remind her how much they valued her work. Kayla smiled as she read the message, feeling proud of the journey she had taken. The next day, Kayla walked into the office with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way. The prejudice she had encountered in the cafe was just a small bump in the road, something she had risen above. Her journey was far from over, and she was determined to continue making an impact. Kayla's hard work was beginning to pay off in ways she hadn't anticipated. The recognition from her team and her growing reputation in the FBI had given her an unshakable confidence. But it was the smaller, quieter moments, those when she took a step back to reflect, that made her realize how much she had grown over the years. The days felt long as the investigation she was working on deepened. The criminals they were pursuing were more dangerous than they had originally thought. Every lead took them deeper into a web of corruption, and it was clear this case was going to be one of the toughest Kayla had ever encountered. But she was ready. She had been preparing for a moment like this her whole life, and now she was more than capable of handling the pressure. In the evenings, when she was alone in her apartment, Kayla often thought about her career and her purpose. She thought about her role in the FBI and the way she was constantly proving that she was capable, regardless of the challenges that came her way. Those challenges, she knew, were not only a part of the job, but also a part of life. They had shaped her into the person she was today, strong, resilient, and unafraid to confront the difficult issues head-on. One evening, as she was preparing to meet her team at a local diner to discuss the next steps in the investigation, Kayla received an unexpected phone call. It was from her old mentor, Agent Stevens. She hadn't spoken to him in a while, and his call surprised her. "Kayla," Stevens said with his usual calm but firm tone, "I just wanted to check in. How's the investigation going?" Kayla sat down on her couch, feeling both comforted and challenged by his voice. Stevens had been a guiding force in her career, always pushing her to be better, always expecting her to reach higher. He had seen something in her from the beginning, and it had made her work harder to live up to his faith in her. "It's going well," she said, smiling as she thought about the investigation. "It's been challenging, but I'm confident we'll get to the bottom of it." "I have no doubt," Stevens replied. "You've always been the best at what you do, Kayla, and you're growing even stronger with every case. I know it's not easy, but keep pushing. You've got what it takes." Kayla felt a warm sense of pride hearing those words. Stevens wasn't just acknowledging her skills. He was recognizing her resilience, her ability to keep going despite the obstacles she faced. It was a reminder that she had been chosen for a reason. Every time she encountered prejudice or adversity, it was an opportunity for her to prove just how capable she truly was. After the call, Kayla felt a sense of calm wash over her. She knew that the next phase of the investigation would be tough, but she was ready for it. She had faced so much in her life, both in her career and in her personal experiences, and each challenge had made her stronger. The following day, Kayla met her team at the diner, where they strategized their next move. As they reviewed the details of the case, she felt a sense of pride in the work they were doing together. Her team respected her, and she respected them. They worked tirelessly to bring the criminals to justice, and every step they took brought them closer to their goal. The next few days were filled with late nights, intense focus, and the kind of collaboration that made Kayla grateful for the team she had. Together, they uncovered crucial evidence that led them closer to catching the criminals behind the scheme. Despite the difficulty of the case, Kayla felt a sense of fulfillment as she reflected on how far she had come. She knew that her journey in the FBI was far from over, but with every case she solved and every challenge she faced, she was reminded that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As long as she continued to fight for what was right, nothing could stop her. Kayla felt the weight of the investigation pressing on her, but it was a feeling she was accustomed to. The deeper they dug into the case, the more complicated it became. She could sense that this was a pivotal moment in her career. She was on the verge of uncovering something big, something that could change everything. But the pressure was also mounting. Every decision she made, every step she took, could have far-reaching consequences. Despite the overwhelming nature of the investigation, Kayla found herself more determined than ever to see it through. She had come too far to back down now. She wasn't just fighting for the success of the case. She was fighting for justice, for the countless people who relied on the work the FBI did. Every day, every hour spent in pursuit of the truth was a step closer to making a real difference. Her team continued to work around the clock, going over the evidence and piecing together the final parts of the puzzle. They followed each lead with precision and care, knowing that one misstep could lead to the criminals slipping through their fingers. Kayla was the backbone of the operation, offering direction and clarity when things got tough. Her leadership skills had earned her the trust of her colleagues, and they looked to her for guidance. She never let them down. Late one night, after hours of reviewing data and reports, Kayla's phone rang. She recognized the number instantly. It was Agent Stevens. "Kayla," Stevens said, his voice calm but urgent. "I've been following your progress closely. You've done an incredible job, but I need you to be extra careful. We're dealing with people who won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to protect themselves." Kayla listened carefully, her heart racing slightly at the weight of his words. She knew the risks, of course, but hearing it directly from Stevens made her feel the gravity of the situation even more. "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "We're doing everything we can. We're close to cracking this wide open." "That's good to hear. Just remember, you have a team that trusts you. Don't let the pressure cloud your judgment. And Kayla, be safe out there." With those words, Stevens ended the call. Kayla stared at her phone for a moment, processing his warning. She appreciated his concern, but she knew she couldn't back down now. There was too much at stake, and the people she served needed her. The next day, Kayla and her team took their investigation to the next level. They gathered everything they had learned and prepared to make their move. They had narrowed down the location of the suspect's hideout, and the time had come to act. Kayla couldn't afford to waste any more time. The operation needed to be executed flawlessly, and she was determined to make sure that happened. Her team followed her lead, knowing that every second counted. As they moved in on the hideout, Kayla's heart raced with anticipation. This was it, the moment they had been working toward for so long. The evidence they had collected pointed directly to this location, and Kayla was confident they were about to make a major breakthrough. The final moments of the operation unfolded quickly. It was a tense and high-stakes situation, but Kayla remained calm. She knew how to handle pressure, and this was no different. Her team moved in swiftly and strategically, following every step they had planned. As the operation ended and the suspects were arrested, Kayla felt a sense of relief wash over her. They had succeeded, and justice had been served. But it wasn't just the success of the mission that gave her a sense of fulfillment. It was the knowledge that she had remained true to her values, that she had done her part to make the world a little bit safer. As she watched the criminals being led away, Kayla allowed herself a small smile. This was the work she had dedicated her life to. The work that had kept her going through all the obstacles and challenges. She had faced adversity and came out stronger for it. And no matter what came next, she knew she was ready to take on whatever the future held. For Kayla, this case was a victory, not just for the FBI, but for herself. She had proven that no matter what others thought of her, she was a force to be reckoned with. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. After the success of the operation, Kayla took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. The tension and pressure of the past few weeks seemed to melt away as she stood in the calm after the storm. The criminals were in custody, and the city was a little safer thanks to the hard work of her team. But for Kayla, this victory wasn't just about catching the bad guys. It was about proving, yet again, that she could face any challenge head-on and rise above it. She took pride in the work she did, but she was also aware of the struggles that lay ahead. There would always be another case, another investigation, another hurdle to overcome. Law enforcement wasn't a job that allowed for complacency. Every day, every hour, was an opportunity to do better, to serve her community, and to fight for justice. Kayla's thoughts were interrupted when her phone rang. It was Agent Stevens again, this time calling to congratulate her on the successful operation. "You did an outstanding job, Kayla," Stevens said, his voice filled with praise. "Your leadership was key in making this work. We couldn't have done it without you." Kayla felt a rush of gratitude for his support. Stevens had been more than just a colleague. He had been a mentor, guiding her through the ups and downs of her career. His faith in her abilities had always pushed her to be better, and now, hearing his approval felt like a personal victory. "Thank you, sir," Kayla replied, her voice steady and sincere. "I couldn't have done it without the team. We all pulled together, and that's what made it happen." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Stevens spoke again, his tone softer this time. "Kayla, I know this case wasn't easy for you. You've had to overcome a lot, and I just want you to know that I see the work you're doing. You've grown into someone truly remarkable, and I'm proud to have you on the team." Kayla's chest tightened with emotion. It wasn't often that she allowed herself to feel vulnerable, but hearing Stevens speak those words made her realize just how much she had accomplished. She had faced countless challenges throughout her career, some that were personal, others that were professional, but she had always persevered. "I appreciate that, sir," she said, fighting back the lump in her throat. "It means a lot to me." As the conversation ended, Kayla sat back in her chair, her thoughts drifting to the road ahead. The work she did was never finished. There would always be more criminals to catch, more people to protect, and more battles to fight. But now, more than ever, she felt ready for whatever came her way. Kayla had proven herself time and time again, not just to others but to herself. She had faced the doubts, the criticisms, and the challenges, and had emerged stronger every time. The struggles she had faced, from the rude encounter at the cafe to the pressures of the job, had shaped her into the person she was today. And while she knew there would always be more hurdles to overcome, she was no longer afraid of them. In the days that followed, Kayla continued to focus on her work, pouring her energy into her cases and her team. She knew that her role as an FBI agent came with great responsibility, but she was ready for it. With every investigation, every new piece of evidence, and every arrest made, she was making a difference in the world. But it wasn't just the big victories that mattered. The small, everyday moments, the smiles from grateful citizens, the respect from her colleagues, and the quiet sense of accomplishment that came from doing the right thing, reminded her why she had joined the FBI in the first place. Kayla was more than just an FBI agent. She was a symbol of resilience and determination. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same strength and grace that had carried her this far. The road ahead might be long, but Kayla was ready to walk it, knowing that she had already proven that nothing could stand in her way.